Hello everybody, I would like to welcome you to our first video in the pre-algebra playlist. This is a really important lesson that needs to be learned, and I would like to start off simple by reviewing something, and that something is a number line. And for those of you who haven't been really exposed to the number line, I think this will be a great concept for you to learn right off the go. So let's get started. Now, I like to start off with the positive part of the number line. And so that really is the one that you've been exposed to so far. That really is this thing right here. And so what really is the number line? A number line is just another way of representing, well, numbers. It's a line that at regular intervals represents values of whole numbers. So the number line really starts off with the zero over here, and then it goes off. So each tick mark could represent a different interval. It could go off by halves or quarters or ones or twos or whatever you really want it to go by. But for our first video, I would just say that it goes off by units of one. So this is zero over here. So the next number, as you know, is one. Then it goes on to two. Then it goes on to three, four, and five. Now it keeps on going like this forever, but for the purposes of this video, we will only end up dealing with small numbers. So this is what we call the positive part of the number line. So let me just write this down over here. So you might be wondering, well, this is to the right of the number line. As you can see, there's a right half of it. So what goes on the other half? So what goes on this area over here? Does it just stay blank? Well, no, there's this whole another world basically to the left of zero, and that is known as the negative world. So the negatives are an important concept that really needs to be learned well. So let's just draw the left portion of the number line. For those of you who haven't really dealt with negative numbers, think about them as being the exact opposite of the positive numbers. And the only thing that you do differently when writing a negative number is that you add a little dash right in front of the number. And then you read this portion over here as the negative. Okay? So if I want to say something as -1, I write it as -1. Okay? And so on and so on. So if I want to say -55, so I'll just write down a little negative over here, and then I'll write the 55. Okay? So the negative portion in the number line goes as this. Starts off in the same way. So right now, instead of going to the right of the zero, we're going to the left of the zero. So we will start off by writing a zero as usual, and then you will do equal intervals. Again, these intervals could go off by any scale. It could go off by halves or whatever. But right now, for the time being, let's just stick with the ones. So this one right here will be -1. This one right here will be -2. This one right here will be -3. This one right here will be -4. And this one will be -5. Okay? And then it keeps on going in the same way forever. And so these right here are the negatives. Okay? So you might be wondering, is there any way that we can, well, basically combine them together? And yes, that is exactly what the number line is. It is the combination of the positive and the negative. And when we combine these two number lines, we end up with something called the real number line. Okay? So the real number line is this. It is simply the combination of the negative number line and the positive number line. So what does it really look like? Well, it just looks like this. It's a straight line on both ends. It keeps on going forever. And the intervals, well, they really stay the same. They could really go by any scale that you want them to go by. but right now we'll just stick with the ones. So this one right here is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Same thing in the negative direction, so -1, -2, -3, -4. And so this right here is our real number line. So you might be really wondering, what really is 0? Well, 0 is classified as being neither. Okay? So far you have dealt with whole numbers. Whole numbers are nice and they're positive. And right now, if you're having troubles understanding the concept of the negatives, I'll make sure that you understand them by the end of this video. So right now, I would like to go further into this, and I would like to define a word, okay? And that word is integer. Integers are basically all of the negative and positive whole numbers, okay? So what are these negative and positive whole numbers? Well, you already know them from the beginning of the video when we drew the number line. An example of integer would be -3 or -2 or -100 even, or even a positive number, positive whole number will be an integer. So 9, 51, and so on and so on and on. Okay, so by now you should be familiar with the positive numbers. Positive numbers are the numbers that you've been used to so far. For those of you who haven't been exposed to negative numbers, now you have. They're basically all the numbers that are to the left of it. You have also been exposed to the real number line, and you now know a new vocab word, and that word is integers. Okay, so on this next page, I would just like to go over the concept of absolute values. Okay? Now, absolute values is most likely a foreign concept. So, before I begin, I would just like to define what it is. So, absolute value. The definition of an absolute value is the distance from the number 0 on the number line. Okay? Now, you're probably wondering, well, how do we measure this distance? Well, the measurement of this distance is, in most textbooks, units. So they'll just say 3 units to the left of 0 is the number -3. But, and basically, if you're really just beginning with the concept of absolute value, one of the best ways of thinking about it is by really imagining that you're standing on the number line right at the halfway mark. Okay, so you're at the number line and you want to figure out what the absolute value of this number over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is. So the absolute value of 4 is just that. It is 4. You will be starting at 0 and you'll be taking 4 steps basically to get to the mark. So your starting point is 0, but your ending point is 4. Therefore, you will be taking 4 steps. You'll be going first step, second step, third step, fourth step. And so the absolute value of 4 is 4. Okay, so similarly, can you tell me what the absolute value of any negative number would be? So if I start off at -1, or if I start off at 0, then I move on to -1, -2, and I want to know what my absolute value of -3 is. So if I'm starting off here, how many steps or how much of a distance would I need to travel from 0 to reach -3? Well, I'll take my first step to get to -1. I'll take my second step to go to -2. And then I'll end up taking my third step to go down to -3. Okay, so I can say the absolute value of -3 is 3. Okay, and basically that makes sense. If the absolute value is defined as a distance from the number 0 on the number line, I am moving 3 units or 3 steps to my left. It doesn't really matter if I move to my left or the right, I did end up moving 3 steps. So basically, the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. But by now, you should be wondering, well, is there any easier way of writing this down? Every time I don't want to write down this whole phrase. So yes, so in mathematics, there's all this thing. So addition is this plus, subtraction is this minus symbol, multiplication is this X over here. So there is a more sophisticated way of writing the absolute value of, okay? And so I'll just show you this right here. Translates to this symbol right here, okay? And the symbol is just 2 lines, okay? 2 lines. And the of whatever, so of 4 or whatever, that number or that expression or anything will go inside the 2 lines. So basically, if I want to say what is the absolute value of 4, I would write this sentence right here, this sentence right here, as this. Absolute value of 4 is equal to 4. Okay? I'll write this absolute value of negative 3 is 3 as. Now I just want you to make sure that you don't get confused with the number 1 and the symbol of the absolute value. So that is why most of the times if I have to write down the 1, in this case I haven't done it over here, but if I have to write down 1, I will write it down as this so you don't get confused with the absolute value signs or one of the sides of the absolute value sign. But it's just one of the notation errors that sometimes appears in math. Okay, so now you have enough experience with absolute values, and so I'll just like to leave you off with this section by this note basically. So if you have an absolute value of a positive number, the answer will be that number. So basically, on the other hand, if you have the absolute value of a negative number, all you need to do to evaluate this is just take out this little dash in front of it and then just take the number as is. So absolute value of an example would be the absolute value of negative 11 would be 11. Okay, so the absolute value of a negative number is just that number. So basically what I'm trying to say is that in a quick check that you perform the absolute value operation correctly is that you will always end up with a positive number. Okay, now in the last portion of this video I would like to explain what really is meant by a negative number. Okay, and so it really seems complicated, but it really isn't. Okay, you just need to have the mindset that you can tackle any negative number that I throw at you, or your teachers throw at you, your parents throw at you, your friends throw at you, whatever. Okay, so what is meant by a negative number? So a common example of negatives that you hear every day has to do something with water. Okay, what do I mean that you deal with negative numbers when it comes to water? Well, when you're dealing with a Fahrenheit scale, so degrees Fahrenheit, okay, you know that water boils right around 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? At the same time, you know that water freezes right around negative 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, what it means is that this can be translated as water into words, if you want to translate it into words, that water boils 212 degrees Fahrenheit above zero, or 0 degrees Fahrenheit, but I won't write the Fahrenheit over here. And what this means is that if the temperature drops 32 degrees Fahrenheit, water will start to freeze. Okay? So, all the negative means is that it really translates to, in many cases, the word below. Okay? So, I'm going to write down a few terminology, few words. I'm going to write down a few words over here. And every time you hear them, think about the negative sign in front of that number. Okay? And basically, any word or any set of words or any combination of words that signify a drop or something just, negative about it, then you need to include that little dash in front of that number. So that really, all of this really symbolizes that there is a negative needed in front of the number. So that's the whole concept of negative numbers. Okay, and I would like to leave you in this video by doing a couple of examples. Okay, and these examples aren't overly difficult, but we'll go over them together so our life is good. Okay, so our example, and these are the things that you'll see a lot in standardized tests, and more often than not, your teachers will also give you these problems. So it is something like practice graphing -3, -6, -5, 4, and 2 on the number line. So that's the whole problem over here. And so the way we'll go on doing this is that we'll just, just draw our own number line. Okay, so now practice graphing. Now you're probably wondering, how do I graph on the number line? Well, you just draw a little circle, a little dot, solid dot on that value that needs to be graphed. So we first start off with -3, okay? -3, well, it's right here, it's 0. It's 3 units or 3 steps. A distance of 3 to the left of 0. So I move 1, 2, and 3. And right on 0, or right on -3, I'll draw a little solid circle. So that's how I graph -3 on the number line. It's pretty easy, right? So let's do the next ones. Well, we don't really need to do them in order, but well, let's just do it in order so far. So -6 is my next one. So -6 will be right here. My next number is -5. So -5 is 5 units to the left of 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's 5 right here. Okay? Then it's +4, and we're moving away from the negatives. Okay? So we're moving 4 units to the right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 units to the right. We have a positive number, and the last number is 2. Okay, so we move 2 units to the right of 0, and we get 1 and 2. So this really didn't take us a long time. Also, it didn't really challenge us, but it's good practice. This is probably most of the things, many times you'll see this in your pre-algebra class, and your teachers will want you to know how to do this. Graphing on the number line is not that hard. When we go over decimals and things like that, I'll include decimal number lines. But so far, I hope you get the idea that it's not overly challenging. Okay? Now, the last example I do in this video is probably more commonly seen than the number line example. And that example is ordering numbers from least to greatest. So order from least to greatest. These numbers right here. Okay, and the numbers are -5, 0, 8, 4, -15, and 9. So let's start off with this. So basically, if you're given any set of numbers, so this set right here, okay, in this set, let's pick out the biggest negative number first. So the biggest negative number over here is -15. Okay, and so we write this down. That's the first number in our set. So that's the least number. That's the least biggest number, I guess, in our set. So -15. So once we're done with that, we can cross it out. The next biggest number, and basically the only negative number in our set, is -5. Okay? And then we can cross it out. The next number we move on to are the positives. But before we move on to the positives, we notice that, hey, 0 is included in this set. So 0 is the next number in our set. Okay? So we cross that out. The next number is 4. 8 will be the next one because 8 comes right before 9. And then the last number is 9. Okay? This right here is our set of these numbers, -5, 0, 8, 4, -15, and 9, when we order them from least to greatest. So this brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned a lot from it. In the next video, we'll go over more pre-algebra concepts. Until then, keep working hard and I'll see you in the next video.